This week can make or break this historic run-up that we've been seeing in the stock market these last few months, because we have CPI inflation coming out on Tuesday. And if you take a look at the chart, you can see that inflation has been slowly increasing since the beginning of May. Will this week's data show that inflation is still a big concern for the economy? That's what I'll be talking about in this video. I'll also be giving a quick breakdown on what I think will happen with CoreWeave and Circle's earnings report this week, and I have timestamps listed below so you can skip around if you like. But before we get into it, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. I'm getting close to 200 subscribers and I appreciate all of the support. Okay, so as I just mentioned, CPI inflation has been uptrending, and the way that it's measured is by taking the average price of housing, rent, food, and transportation throughout the month. So since we know that, let's first take a look at housing and rent prices. As I mentioned in my previous videos, the number of home sellers are significantly higher than home buyers right now. So that would create an environment where we see home prices decline. But as of right now, the actual data is mixed. This map goes all the way back to July of 2022 to July of this year. And if you take a look at it, only certain areas have seen a decline in home prices for the last 3 years, and other areas have seen an increase. When it comes to rent prices, the average cost has been in a rapid decline since the end of 2022. So that's also something to consider as well. Let's now take a look at oil. The good thing about oil is that we can see the price in real time, and it'll help us see the bigger picture of what's to come this week. Let's take a look at it. Crude oil had a sharp decline at the end of June through the beginning of July, and it continued to consolidate all throughout the month. Then it had a slight increase, followed by a sharp decline in the beginning of August, which will not be shown in the data coming out this week. Remember, CPI inflation tracks last month's data, not the month that we're currently in. The cost of eggs also plays a minor role in the inflation data as well, and the chart looks similar to the crude oil chart, where we saw a slight increase towards the end of July, followed by a sharp decline in August. Lastly, we have transportation. I'm just going to go through this real quick because there's really nothing to see here, but if you take a look at this chart, you can see that it was on a slight decline through the month of June. There's really no way to get real-time data on this because the price changes pretty rapidly, so we'll just have to wait and see what it looks like on Tuesday. But here's what I think will happen this week. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw inflation spike up again on this week's report. However, in the September report, I think that we would see inflation start to cool again for the first time since May. That's just my opinion because, as I mentioned, a lot of the prices started to fall in the beginning of August, and we wouldn't see that reflect on any data until September's CPI report. But when these numbers come out, I'll be sure to keep you updated on how it all unfolds. Now let's take a look at earnings report. We have two of the biggest IPOs of the year reporting last quarter's earnings on Tuesday. And I personally have a rule not to invest in any IPOs for the first few months, but these two have seen massive gains since they became public. Then it was followed by a sharp decline, which that's why I say to be careful with IPOs. When it comes to Circle, I don't really care for the stock, but one thing that I'd like to point out is that they have revenue concerns. If the Fed actually goes through with cutting interest rates in September, then it'll relieve some pressure on the revenue, but it still wouldn't make that much of a difference. However, when it comes to CoreWeave, I'm very interested to see how this one plays out, because first off, when Microsoft reported earnings just the other week, they saw a massive increase in revenue on their cloud services. So I wouldn't be surprised if CoreWeave also saw a similar increase in revenue as well, because after all, Microsoft and OpenAI are the biggest clients as of right now. However, the biggest concern is their debt. Once they have that figured out, it would definitely be a solid company to invest in. They don't really have a direct impact on any tariffs, which is a good thing for the guidance, so I wouldn't be surprised if they also gave forward guidance during the report. But that's all for now. Thank you for watching and I appreciate the support. Let's have a solid week.